what do you think are the best decision points to be starting to collect that sort of data?
Oh gosh, that really depends on where you're at in your business, right? If you're in scaling mode, then it could be, how many sales reps do we need to hire? Okay, well then the data you want to look at is a lot different than, let's say, if you're just trying to figure out your go-to-market motion in the first place, or what are the types of customers that you have. So it's hard to say, listen, in sales in general, but I would say in any type of revenue organization that you're in, understand like what is the key decision or what's the key question that you're asking and why, and how does that connect to the other things, and then just work backwards and try to keep it simple, like ideally to one metric, maybe no more than three. And I think that level of simplicity can help a lot to say, okay, this is just what we need to track, and know that you could always track more if you wanted to. But I think the natural tendency is, listen, we may not know what we actually want, so let's track everything.
Yeah.
And then what happens is you have all the data and then you get lost in the analysis part and you never actually connect it to a critical question that you're trying to ask.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know if I answered your question, but that's
no.
yeah.
Totally. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it all comes down to the organization, the stage of the company, and it's not about it being a common set of metrics that you want to track. It's about what metrics do you need to track based on the questions that you're trying to answer. Yeah, absolutely. Makes sense. And when we're thinking about then implementing some sort of system or some sort of tracking, what kind of, I guess, impact does that have then on the organization that's trying to do their job? Like, are we trying to avoid things where we're asking people to shift the way that they currently do things? Is it sort of recommend, like, is it okay or condoned if it's for the sake of collecting data? What's the move there?
I think that's the heart of the issue right there. And when you talk about the data that you want in sales, so the sales team has their job to do, but it's not just the sales leadership that's asking for the data. A lot of times product will come in and say, all right, we want to know what's standing out about the product in these deals, or what features are actually leading to deals getting done versus deals lost, right? So then they'll submit a request and say, we want to capture this data in the sales process. Marketing comes in. We want to know these few things. Finance comes in. All these other folks come in. And so before you know it, you have this long list of things that as a sales rep, you need to gather that has nothing to do with you actually closing the deal or hitting your own success metrics. So I think that's one point that I'm seeing more and more. And I think it's supporting your point earlier around organizations just becoming more data driven. So anyway, so let's look at it through this lens of lots of data requests being made of the sales organization, right? Those usually get funneled through the ops organization. Well, what are the tools that ops has? You usually have page layouts in Salesforce, you've got validation rules, you have required fields. And so the levers that most ops folks are pulling is, how do I make this required? Right? How can I build structure both into the data and then have these key checkpoints so that a rep can't move forward until they fill this data? Why? Because leadership is saying they need this data, so I should do it. Is it a wrong thing to do? No, I mean, that's probably, if that's all you knew to do, then that's probably what you do. But what I think it misses is the opportunity to actually capture this data by influencing workflow instead of the data structure and making it required. So what it's doing is it's putting all of the burden on top of the rep. I've got my quota to hit. I've got my pipeline to manage. I've got, my manager to deal with, which is a whole nother topic, but I've got all this stuff to do. And on top of that, I have this really rigid, structured process that ops has put in place for me. And that is present in most sales organizations that I've talked to. And the impact of that is devastating, right? It's hurting the reps, it's hurting their morale, it's hurting their productivity, and it's still not getting the data that they want, right? Because what do you do as a rep? All right, right at that last minute, I'm just going to put some stuff in there. So you're not actually getting an accurate reflection of what's going on. So it's really not serving anybody well. The view that we take here at Scratchpad on how to influence that is through simplicity. Is imagine a world where you could get rid of validation rules, required fields, and these like ridiculous page layouts, but most reps are actually capturing this data today. It's just not getting into the CRM. And so we looked at it through that perspective and said, well, what if you could just make it simple? What if you could just make it easy? What if you can make it fast? And that's one thing that we're seeing some RevOps teams lean into now, is saying there is another tool that we have. There's another lever that we have that we could pull to still get the same objective, but it's aligning with how the reps already work, instead of saying, nope, you've got a block here, you've got a hurdle here, you've got a figure out this crazy combination code before you can proceed to the next stage in your deal. And I think that's something we'll probably start seeing more of in sales organizations, of folks adopting that mindset that there's so much you can achieve just by making things simple.